good news, happy news, joyous news. Because normally we jump right in and we talk about Nazism
Devastating.
like we did last week. Hello, I'm Colin, and welcome to the C&C Talks podcast, episode 25 of season 3 of C&C Talks here. Just in case you're new or need a refresher, we release episodes every single week where we talk about politics, world events, and sports. Taping this on Monday, September 30th, 2024 at about 9 p.m. Pacific time. Now, if you listened to last week's episode of C&C Talks, you may have noticed two things. Number one, Charlie was not there. We had a guest host, Zack. Charlie is again not here today. Instead, it's our other producer, Morris, here as our guest host for this episode. Bring him on in just a sec. The other thing that you may have noticed about that one is it was really, 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 really long. We don't anticipate this episode being nearly as long. Back then we were accounting for more than 3 weeks of news stories, and today only like 4 or 5 days of news stories. So that will bring on our producer Morris to guest us this episode. Welcome, Morris.
Hey, how's it going?
Good to see you in front of the microphone instead of behind it on this episode of the podcast. We're
Yeah.
going to start, Morris, with something that we don't often get to say when we start our episodes of this podcast, and that is with some good news, happy news, joyous news. Because normally we jump right in and we talk about Nazism
Devastating.
like we did last week, or some sort of indictment, or the election, or something. That's not what we're starting with this week because did say it was September 30th at about just after 9 p.m. Pacific time. That means in the East Coast, specifically in the state of Georgia, as of this recording, it is now after midnight. It's now October 1st there, which means that former United States President Jimmy Carter is officially 100 years old today.
That is incredible.
He has become the first United States president to ever make it to 100 years old. Happy birthday to him. What's incredible about this, Morris, about this story, is that in February of 2023, Jimmy Carter went into hospice care. That was 19 months ago, I believe. 19, I think. Generally, people don't go into hospice care and survive for 19 months.
I think
Right?
the
Like,
last famous person, at least to my memory, the last person that went to hospice care that was famous was Queen Elizabeth, and she did not make it.
yeah. So, I mean, as far as I know, Jimmy Carter is still in hospice care. He says that he wants to hold out long enough to cast his vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in the presidential election. He says that that's his goal, according to his grandson. Um, I mean, you got to admire it. That guy just does not seem to want to die. Now 100 years old. I mean, back in February 2023, people were already writing the obituaries for him, assuming that they'd be published probably in like March or April of 2023. He not only made it to 99, he made it to 100 now. Of course, his life is different now. He uses a wheelchair, is not in great shape. He lost his wife, Rosalind, back in, I want to say, November of last year. They'd been together
Yeah,
for
sad
a
about
long
that.
time. I want to say like 70 years of marriage.
77. I'm looking at
Yeah,
a New York Times
77 years of
article right
marriage.
now.
Just pretty incredible. And you can say whatever you want to about Jimmy Carter as a president, and certainly a lot of people have a lot of opinions on this. But this is something that I don't even think is widely disputed. I think people on both sides of the aisle tend to agree on this. Jimmy Carter has been an excellent former president. Jimmy
I
Carter,
agree.
Jimmy
I
Carter's.
really
Go
I
ahead.
will say I respect him as a former president. He's spoken, in my mind, when it's important, and he clearly is holding on to something, and I hope that he's holding on to hope for um, the election to not have any issues or
Yeah,
interference.
I think with Jimmy Carter, like I would argue his legacy post presidency is bigger than his legacy during his presidency, right? What he'll be known for to me, I think, and of course, we're not trying to say that we're not trying to give our own obituary. We'll do that for him when if and when he eventually does die. But just some comments about the life that he's lived up to 100. I mean, I feel like when all is said and done, this is everything that he's done post presidency will be what he's remembered for, specifically with the Habitat for Humanity stuff. Like this dude was literally at like age 95 building houses. Like not just like
Wow,
funding a bunch of
I didn't know
houses
that.
being built.
That's crazy.
Physically like being the person helping to build these houses at like age 95.
As someone who
And-
built a tiny home, worked on a project
Yeah.
and built a tiny home, that is really impressive.
Yeah. No. This dude is just about as good of a person as you can find out there. And just
I will
such a
say I was curious, so I pulled up his Wikipedia page. It's already been updated. It hasn't been like 4 hours, and it's been updated not only with his current age, but a line noting that he is the first U.S. president to live to the age of 100, which I just gotta say is insane. The speed of Wikipedia contributors.
yeah. Who knows how much longer he'll hold on for? Certainly, it'll be a very sad day when he dies. But happy 100th birthday to the greatest former president in United States history. All right, we've dealt with the happy stuff, Morris.
Oh
That
God, here it
means
comes.
Israel. Let's talk
Uh,
about Israel. Because
there's a lot going on.
there's a lot
Uh,
going on because
I wouldn't be shocked if new news broke while we were recording this.
yeah, I mean it's a lot. I mean, this was not a story that until like a couple days ago I really was following what Israel was doing with Lebanon. But now they have started a ground operation in South Lebanon. That means
Yes.
troops on the ground in South Lebanon. Um, Morris, what is Israel doing?
Um, my understanding of stuff from talking with people who are in Israel, both on conservative and liberal sides, and different forms of practicing Jews, Muslims, Arabs, everyone. My understanding is Netanyahu is just trying to stay in power and is doing
Yep.
whatever he can, and because of that, he is willing to do practically whatever the majorative power is telling him, and unfortunately, majorative power is extreme Orthodox Jews who are very conservative, and they also want to stay in power, obviously, and so it all boils down to everyone wants to stay in power, and the best way, as we know, for everyone to stay in power is to cause chaos.
Yeah. I mean, like this has been going on for a little while. Obviously, just like with Israel Gaza, there's a history between Israel and Hezbollah, which this is really what this is about because Israel assassinated the leader of Hezbollah fairly recently,
No,
and
no,
Hezbollah,
not just the leader, the entire like leading team.
yeah, the Hezbollah they have not yet chosen a new leader yet. The U.S. is trying to pressure Israel to reach a ceasefire agreement with Hezbollah because war in the Middle East isn't great. Especially another one that Israel's involved in, and Israel does not seem interested in taking the U.S.'s advice. And look, here's the thing with Israel, for me at least. Like, what are you doing? Like, you
You have
have
very little power at
you
this
have
point.
an ally in the United States that has stuck with you through a lot more than a lot of people in the United States think they should have stuck with you by, but there have been signs that the support that you have from the United States is, if not
Waning.
necessarily waning in like direct actions, like uh, the U.S. is making it very clear to Israel that there are at least some lines, and especially true with Kamala Harris when she talks about the fact that how Israel does defend itself actually does matter in terms of how the U.S. will continue to support Israel. And so what Netanyahu is doing is he is racing across all of the lines and saying, hey, let's not just bomb the hell out of Gaza. Let's launch a ground invasion in another country, Lebanon. Like, what are we
No,
doing here?
they're just going after the whole Middle East. And
Yeah.
it's not smart
No,
because
none
what's
of it
going to
seems
happen
smart to me. Like,
if we look at it from a military tactical view instead of a political one, if you spread your troops too far out, you have no one left to cover where you are, and you've given up your base. You could take this is really going to oversimplify it, but take capture the flag as an easy example. If it's 5v5 and you have 5 people and they go on opposite sides and they kind of come around, you have no one left guarding your flag.
okay, sure, I get that analogy, but also, in fairness, Israel has a much larger military than the rest of them. They have many more resources at their disposal than the rest of them, a lot of those from the United States. So, like, I don't think that that's the problem for Israel. I think that the problem is in terms of, creating much larger war around the globe. Like, is there going to be is Iran next? What's the
Oh
end game here?
god.
What are we doing?
I feel like at this point, and I don't I as a producer I feel the need to say C&C Talks does not speak for anyone. This is all opinion.
Yeah.
Anyway, other than reporting literal facts. But my my best guess, based on talking to many people, is Israel's trying to eliminate any future problematic reactions or war, but they're doing it prematurely. And so what's happening is they're going after everyone to prevent war from restarting. If they control the whole area, no war can happen from other countries. Granted, there could be revolutions, whatever, but no external war can happen.
But so the plan then is for Israel to just control the entire Middle East? Because boy, that's not going to go over well with a lot of people, including, the United States, nor should it go over well with any of them.
No, because then it becomes a dictatorship.
Yeah, and they're invading sovereign countries. Um, and
Yeah.
I think that the bigger, just like again, the bigger flaw in Israel's thinking is you is the U.S. Is your closest ally and pretty much completely funds your entire military. And you have essentially said to the US, you have no power over us because we think that you're going to keep funding us no matter what. So we're not going to listen to anything you say. And hey, maybe that works out great for them. Especially
I
if
mean,
Trump
it
gets elected, I
has.
think there's a great chance that that does work out great for them. But there's also
If
a
Trump
real
gets
chance.
elected, realistically, there's a chance that other countries in Europe will start helping them too.
Sure. But there's also a very real chance that it doesn't work out well for Israel and your military gets wrecked.
Right. I mean, yeah, there's historical stories and there's stuff in religious texts that talk about Israel having a incredible war strategy and being able to overcome militaries like historically that are um, more than 5 times the size,
Sure.
I can't help but wonder if they're kind of riding on the coattails of that and like, "Oh, we're gonna make it. We're gonna do everything we wanna do." I just don't think that's how the world works anymore. Israel is I feel like is over it's they're over optimistic, and because of that, they're making rash decisions, and they can't comprehend how the rest of the world sees them. And by that, I mean the
Well,
Israeli government, not Israel itself,
yeah.
to be clear.
All right. Moving on. This episode will be out after the fact. But the vice presidential debate between Tim Walz and JD Vance was Tuesday night, October 1st, the evening of October 1st. Yes, C&C Talks was live on YouTube for that. Go back and watch it. I say that thinking that we're going to be live because we haven't
We
actually
should be.
gone live at the time of recording this, but we're planning on doing a live stream to recap the debate Tuesday night. We'd love it if you check that out. But I'm curious, Morris, looking before the debate, what are your thoughts on a potential debate between these two candidates?
I'm gonna make a prediction right now.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that's gonna happen is, um, Tim Walz is gonna connect a lot of stuff that, Harris has said previously, and is gonna tie it together in a nice bow. And honestly, I think JD Vance is gonna try and separate himself from Trump as much as possible, as he has been doing for the past multiple months, and reiterate policy, but while simultaneously connecting and distancing himself from Trump.
I think that's interesting, right? Because in some ways, JD Vance has to tie himself to Trump, but at the same time, like, I mean, you're right in a way. JD Vance is capable of talking about policy. Trump isn't capable of talking about policy. And so, are we going to get some policy? Maybe. I've always found that I don't care about policy in vice presidential debates because we're not voting for the vice presidential candidate's policy, which often does significantly differ from the presidential candidate's policy. There's often some big differences there. I think it's more about a lot about like defending your running mate, defending yourself, the character of yourself, and explaining why if worst case scenario happens, you'd be a person ready to take over. So I think I think it's just they do end up just being a lot more about the presidential candidate's policy, which I think is weird if since the vice presidential candidate doesn't necessarily agree with it 100% of the time. But I mean, I mentioned a couple things on last week's episode about some lines I think Tim Walz could use that would be good for him in the debate. Go back and listen to that if you haven't already. But I think Tim Walz should win the debate. I don't know how well JD Vance's attacks are going to land. I
Well, I will say this. I think it's interesting. I wonder if after the presidential debate, there was a brief interview with Vance about um, revisiting abortion law
yeah.
on a federal level, and J.D. Vance went on the record saying, "Why are we talking about laws that will
Oh
never be made?"
yeah.
I
Yeah,
wonder if
that
that will
would
come
be a
up.
great look for him if he says that on stage. Now, here's the thing. So CBS News is moderating it. I believe it's Laura O'Donnell and Margaret Brennan that are going to be the moderators of the debate. Look, CBS News has said they will not do any live fact checking. Here's the problem with that,
Huh.
is that you guys are journalists, allegedly. You guys are allegedly journalists. And what you have essentially said is that you have this known liar going on stage, somebody that has literally said on television, is admitted to making up stories. He admitted that on camera when referring to the Haitian immigrants eating the pets thing. He admitted that he made up that story, but he won't apologize for it. He's admitted that he's a liar. And you're not going to fact check anything that he says on that stage. And you're
I'm
essentially saying it's the other candidate's job to fact check it. Well, look, here's the problem with that is that it makes it very easy for a Gish Galloper to win the debate because it means all you have to do is just lie for your entire time, and then the other candidate has to spend their entire time debunking all your lies.
I wonder if, I think it's funny because there was a lot of controversy. I say controversy with heavy air quotes so that you cannot see me, because of the fact that um, the moderators for the presidential debate were flamed for not fact checking Harris, and I wonder if they're doing it to avoid any kind of controversy on either side, knowing that every other um, news organization will be live fact checking and putting out
Yeah,
results.
but that doesn't matter. Fact checks after the debate doesn't matter. Most people turn the TV off once the debate is over. The fact checks won't be heard or remembered by nearly as many people as the lies themselves. Now, I think that you're right. That is what caused the decision. Now, let's be clear. David Muir and Lindsey Davis should have fact checked Trump when they did. They did not do anything wrong. If anything, they didn't fact check him enough. They only chose like the two or three biggest lies that Trump told, and fact check those. We talked about this on last week's
Well,
podcast.
I will say
Like
that I will say in those cases, uh, it does make for interesting television when someone's fact checked a bunch. It also can hurt ratings, views, the image of the whole organization, and can also be seen as bad television when you're constantly interrupting a presidential candidate.
sure, but what I'd love for news organizations to maybe finally figure out is that this isn't for the American people about how many views you get as a TV network. This is about literally the most important election in history, deciding who is going to win that election, who people are going to vote for, something that is going to affect our lives permanently. And we're just making it out
Yeah.
as like, oh, but if we do this, it might not make quite as good television, so we can't do it. Like, what are we doing? That's not journalism. That's like that's
No, it's something called
infotainment.
corporate America.
Yeah. Like we've say on this podcast a lot that like the press has failed at their jobs. They have failed the American public. And this is, I think, where an area where it is especially true. We'll see what ends up happening, but I imagine that that's going to be JD Vance's strategy, and we'll of course recap it on stream on YouTube Tuesday night immediately after. So make sure to go back and watch that if you did not join us live. And we move on now, Morris, to the stock markets. Markets keep hitting record highs. Um, Signs of
Yeah.
a good economy. Not, I mean, look, you want to be careful because the stock market is not the best measure of the economy, but it's one of many signs at the moment that we have a very strong economy in this country. You have a few other things to add with the stock market, I believe, Morris.
Yeah, the tech sector has been very vibrant recently. Large contributions to the Dow Jones going up, as well as the S&P 500. Um, Especially the Wall Street Journal recently reported that Qualcomm is looking to acquire Intel, which personally find hilarious given the fact that Intel is literally worth more than Qualcomm. But that would be connected to if Intel, which is these are both chip manufacturing companies for the record, in case you did not know, they are responsible for many laptop chips and phone chips. But yeah, and then also Apple with their AI called Apple Intelligence has been disappointing investors and is borderline false advertising with advertising features which are not shipping until 1 to 5 months from now as like the main features of the phone, which is not
Yeah.
good because you never really want to be misleading to customers.
No. Um, all right. From stocks to hurricanes. We've had a bad one. Hurricane Helen has just obliterated the southeast, Georgia, I think, Florida, North Carolina. Tennessee, I believe, maybe a couple other states as well. It is one of the worst hurricanes we've seen recently in this country. I believe at least, according to CNN, as of right now, at least 128 people dead, hundreds of people missing. Um, Lots of people been without power, some people stuck in their homes, devastation, roads destroyed. It's gonna take the Southeast a long time
Absolutely.
to come back from this.
More than 50 people
The
died on
federal government
landfall.
has approved aid. They've sent a lot of aid. FEMA has sent aid to these states. But this is one of the worst hurricanes we've seen in a while.
Absolutely. More than 50 people died on landfall. Um, Researchers are considering adding a category 6, which is not anything new. It's been in discussion since at least 2013, but it's getting closer to being finalized and added to, I don't know if I'm saying this right, the Saffir-Simpson scale. And then on top of that, like it's wild. I know people in the South and Southeast who um they're like places have been decimated. I know small mountain towns have been left without running water.
Yep.
Um, Many people are missing, like you said, people dead, people starving to death.
Yep.
It's absolutely horrifying.
Yeah, and I mean this is also something that's gonna keep getting worse, right? Hurricanes are going to become more common with climate change. And we've seen several big ones in the last few years. I don't know if there's specific data to back up an increase in the last couple of years, but just as an overall trend, it things are going to get worse unless we do something about this. And so far we're not, for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I th- I have to wonder if Hurricane Helen will be marked down as a large enough hurricane in history that the name will be retired. I was actually recently listening to something earlier today about how the history of naming hurricanes. And
Yeah.
at one point in time, fun fact, it actually was named after politicians that were deeply disliked.
Really?
Yes.
That is
But,
wow.
I can't remember what his name was, but the person who came up with the naming scale at one point was just naming them after politicians he hated, which I find hilarious.
We're getting Hurricane Trump anytime soon.
Yeah, someone else suggested naming them after senators, which I find hysterical. Um, but currently, there's the National Hurricane Center has 6 rotating lists, so it rotates. So the list from 2019 will be reused in 2025.
Yeah.
But certain hurricanes that are horrible enough, such as I think Patricia is one of them,
Yeah.
get retired as to not cause confusion
Yeah.
and distress and PTSD.
Yeah. Uh Speaking real quick, as I mentioned joke, but it is worth repeating that what Trump has done with hurricanes during his time in office. A reminder that he misled people on the path of a hurricane by drawing with Sharpie a change in the map of a hurricane because he had previously said it was going through Alabama when he was wrong, so he tried to make it right. He threw paper towels or toilet paper or whatever it was at the victims of Hurricane Maria back in 2017 in Puerto Rico, and he's suggested nuking them. So
Yes,
not the guy that you want to be dealing with these natural disasters.
it's
These
very.
horrific.
I question uh, if former President Trump understands the severity of a hurricane.
I mean, he uh he lives in Florida, so you'd think maybe, but I don't know. I don't think it's ever impacted his golf
Yeah,
course.
if a
And none of I
hurricane
don't
hit
think he
Mar-a-Lago,
cares.
what do you think would happen?
If what?
A hurricane hit Mar-a-Lago, what do you think would happen?
He'd say that the weather was rigged against him.
That's probably true. That's probably true.
And I know you know I'm right.
Yeah.
All right. moving on from that, to once again we're at Charlie's stat of the week, but once again with no Charlie, this week it is Colin's stat of the week. We think Charlie will be back next week, which means that it'll go back to him, but for now it's still with me. And we're gonna go back to the Jimmy Carter thing here more. Jimmy Carter, first U.S. president to turn 100 years old. So the question is, before Jimmy Carter, who was the longest living U.S. president?
Bush?
Which one?
George W. Bush?
No, George W. Bush is still alive, and he is 78 years old. There have been several presidents that have made it older than him, including
So technically I'm not wrong yet.
no, including the current president.
But technically I'm not wrong yet on that one.
No. Do you want to know the answer?
Sure.
It is the other Bush. Bush 41 died back in 2018 at the age of 94. Gerald Ford was now the third oldest president at the age of death at 93. Reagan made it to 93 as well. Interestingly enough, the fifth longest living president was John Adams, which most of these are a lot more recent, end of the 20th century, beginning of the 21st century, and then you have John Adams, who died on July 4th, 1826. Interestingly enough, the exact same day that Thomas Jefferson died.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
quite the coincidence.
Yeah. All right. Moving on from that, into the world of sports. We had a fun week in sports. We'll start with NFL. We'll go to college football. We'll go to MLB. We'll do a quick minute on golf, and then we'll hop off of here. Starting in the NFL. 16 games this week. Final week of 16 games for a while. Bye weeks start next week. Let's start with the Thursday night matchup: Dallas over New York Giants. Malik Neighbors out injured. I've been really impressed with Malik Neighbors so far, man. I really have as a receiver for the Giants, but Giants are now 1-3, I believe. Yeah, 1-3. Cowboys look back on track. Maybe they didn't look great. The Giants aren't a great team. So I'm not fully ready to say the Cowboys are back, but it was a positive step for them. Elsewhere in that division, though, in the NFC East, the Washington Commanders leading that division right now, and they look great. Jaden Daniels, rookie quarterback, looks amazing. In that win over Arizona as well. Just the last couple weeks, he's looked great. Philly lost badly to Tampa, and here's my thing with Philly: they're 2-2. They should be 0-4, or they could easily be 0-4 at least.
Why do you think that?
Both of their games that they won, they probably shouldn't have won. Just an ugly, ugly win against New Orleans, a game they probably shouldn't have won. A decent win against Green Bay, but with how it ended, it wasn't great. The Packers nearly led a game-winning drive. So this feels like a team that's just not very good. I'm sorry, Philly fans. You are welcome to get on me if they go on a run, but to me, in a lot of ways, this feels like a continuation of last year, sort of, except like in terms of the talent level right now. But it also feels like last year, they at the end of the year, they were finding ways to lose games. And right now it feels like the only games that they win are games that they shouldn't be winning, instead of losing games they should be winning. So it feels worse in some ways to me. What's going on in Philly now?
Do we even
Tampa,
have
on the
anyone
other
that
hand.
listens from Philly?
What?
Does anyone actually listen from Philly?
Probably not. Does anyone actually listen? Let us
Well,
know
if
if
you
you're out
do,
there.
yeah, send us an email, info@cctalks.com.
Yeah, no, love to hear from you guys. Tweet at us, go to our website, whatever. join our Discord. We'll get to all that at the end of the show, of course. But no, please contact us with your thoughts. We will gladly respond to them on the podcast. But no, speaking of Tampa though, they look great. But that division looks a lot more competitive than I thought it was. I thought it would be. New Orleans and Atlanta, they played a great game. Atlanta ended sneaking out with a win. It was a great game, and that division at this point to me feels open. I would say,
Yeah.
pretty darn open right now. I mean, not the Panthers. The Panthers are out of there, but they're 1-3, and that one win might be the only one to get all. See, I'll give them this. They've looked a little better since benching Bryce Young. They still need to figure out what they're actually going to do with him, but something.
Remind me why they benched Bryce Young?
Yeah, because he sucks.
That's fair.
Or at least
that's probably the most valid reason to bench him.
I mean, so look, the Panthers are just a failure of an organization right now. Like, I do not understand what they've been trying to do over the last couple of years, but they have somehow managed to take a team that was okay but had some really good players and now get into a team that is awful and doesn't have a single talented player on it.
That's awful.
It's embarrassing. They're an embarrassment of an organization. They're an absolute joke. And it's all because of football ops decisions that they made. They decided to trade away DJ Moore. They decided to trade away Christian McCaffrey. And they decided to do all of these trades, trade away all these good players, and give up more draft picks than they got in return. Like,
why would they? Why do you think they would do that?
What? How do you, as a general manager, like, survive that? Like, you should be fired instantaneously as soon as you make any of those trades. And the DJ Moore trade, well, you can say, oh, well, we at least got the number 1 overall pick in it. Okay, and then you used it on a quarterback that, sure, had the high upside, but had a floor that everybody knew was low just because of his height. Right? Everybody knew this because he's only 5'11". And you were like, no, this is our guy. And no, don't get me wrong, there wasn't a ton of dispute that he should go number 1 overall. But given where you were as a franchise, you maybe weren't the right team to take a guy like that. Like, C.J. Stroud was a safer bet, and guess what? C.J. Stroud is miles better than Bryce Young. Now, I hope you do the right thing with him because I like the kid. I hope that you trade him to an organization that knows what they're doing, and maybe, just maybe, he can actually still have a good career because it's not happening with your friend.
Absolutely. I mean, with those kinds of trades, you gotta ask: was there something more happening behind the scenes? Did something happen that caused them to just want to get rid of those people?
Well, their owner's an asshole, but I don't think that was the reason. Just in every possible way, a joke of a franchise. We talked about the Panthers a minute ago. Jordan Love is back, but a bad loss to Minnesota. Although Minnesota, man, I gotta say, you could not have told me that this was a team that was going to be 4-0. But hey, Sam Darnold looks great. Obviously, Justin Jefferson's doing Justin Jefferson things. I mean, credit where credit's due. I thought they were going to be in last place in that division, and well, I thought it was probably the best division in football, but I thought they were headed for last place. That's probably going to be the Bears. They did get a win over the Rams, but that offense is ugly. Seattle fans knew it was going to be ugly because they hired Shane Waldron, former Seahawks offensive coordinator, who is a terrible, terrible coach, and should be nowhere near an NFL field. But they hired him, and it's not going well. But hey, they won a second game. Caleb Williams is fine so far. Not necessarily what we thought he'd be. Jaden Daniels so far has been what we thought Caleb Williams. The Rams, though, they are struggling as a team. And that leads to still an open NFC West. I mean, sort of. The battle is between the two teams that we thought it was going to be between, the Seahawks and the 49ers, right? 49ers, good bounce back against New England. Not a very good team that they played, but Seattle, 13-point loss on Monday Night Football this week to the Lions. I mean, the Seahawks are 3-1. They lead the division by a game, but the 49ers are healthy again. Well, mostly healthy again. I'm at the point where I'm like, it's still the 49ers division to lose.
Yeah.
Right, Seahawks, I felt like watching what the Seahawks did against the Lions, even though they lost by 13, was validating because they looked good even while missing four starters on the defensive line. So pretty much the
Wow.
entire defensive line missing. And they still looked like a pretty good team. So,
That's actually kind of incredible. I
yeah,
would
no, it
not
is.
have pegged that for happening.
Yeah, no, they are good. But and we were kind of wondering because they haven't played a good team. They look good though.
You know what we should do? We should make bingo cards of the most unexpected events that we can think will happen this season.
Yeah, what would be
Like
the
just
most
some random wild things.
event? Definitely not the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl. That would be expected. The Kansas City Chiefs have not played like a great football team this year so far, and there will come a time when they have to, but they haven't had to yet because they're 4-0, with 4 wins versus some pretty good teams. We think some pretty good teams at least, and when they weren't pretty wins, but they were wins, and that's what matters. They're 4-0.
Right.
The Kansas City Chiefs are going to once again, heading into the playoffs, be the favorites to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Especially since the NFL, like right now, a lot of teams that we thought were going to be great haven't been. The Lions look pretty good. They're not amazing so far. They haven't wowed anyone yet. The 49ers haven't wowed anyone yet. The Bengals look bad. The Texans, I mean, they have a loss. They've looked pretty good. The uh, the Cowboys have definitely not wowed anyone. The Eagles haven't. Right, the NFC is I have no idea who's coming out of the NFC. I guess maybe the Vikings, but it still feels hard to say, yeah, no, through 4 weeks, yeah, I'm completely sold on the Vikings entire season. The NFL just
Yeah.
feels very open at the moment, 4 weeks in. A lot of what we thought sets, but maybe there's just a lot more parity than usual right now. Wouldn't be a bad thing. One thing,
I,
Cleveland
I,
is
I feel I
awful.
feel like I feel like the
Uh,
biggest thing is we're at a point where there's so many things happening, both expected and unexpected. It's pretty much anyone's game, in terms of what can happen, not necessarily in terms of winning games, but in terms of events within the NFL. And so I
yeah.
wonder what we'll be reporting on. I'm very curious to see how everything shakes out.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting is like we're able to tell 4 weeks in who the bad teams are so far, right? We've been able to tell who those teams are. Jacksonville, Carolina,
Some of the
probably
usual suspects.
May, what?
Some of the usual suspects.
Yeah, the Giants, the Titans, the Browns looked awful. Maybe Denver. But I don't think we've really been able to determine who's good yet, or at least not who's like elite. The Bills look great, except for this week, right? We thought, okay, here come the Bills. Bills might be the favorite for the Super Bowl this year. Nope, they go and get destroyed by Baltimore. A good team, but a team that's had a rough start to the year.
That's a big
So
L.
it's it's open, and right, that is a good thing for the sport. Now one final comment on the NFL. If you happen to watch that Denver Broncos New York game, uh, you may be entitled to financial compensation.
I'm
Um,
sorry, what?
it was that bad of a game. Um,
I did not watch it, but what happened?
Everything happened. And nothing at the same time. It was
A
one
Viking a
of the
Viking
worst
streaked
football games
across
I've ever
the
watched.
wait, did a Viking streak across the field?
No.
Okay, not everything happened. You can't tell me
Yeah,
that,
okay.
Colin.
This was how the game started. Through how far through this was not even through the entire first quarter.
Oh no.
Fumble, punt, 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 fumble.
Oh my god.
Finally, we finally got our first score of the game. Uh into the second quarter on a field goal by the Jets after a terrible drive, a drive that they gained a grand total 29 yards, and was held at the 1. And then after that field goal, what happened next? Punt, 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 punt. Finally,
Naturally.
another field goal by the Jets to close out the half. But then we picked up where we left off again in the second half. Punt, punt. Ooh, we finally got a touchdown for the Broncos, the only touchdown of the game. Ooh, the Giants answered with a field goal. Okay, maybe we have a little drama. They've taken the lead, and now the Broncos take it back with a field goal. And then the rest of the game, punt, punt. Jets turn it over on downs. Broncos now kicking a field goal. Not a very long field goal. A decently long field goal, actually. A 50-yard field goal. Okay, this is to make it a 4-point game. No, they missed it. Okay, here come the Giants. They're driving down the field. Ooh, they have a chance for a 50-yard field goal with 47 seconds to win the game, and they missed it.
Wow.
This was one of the worst football games I'm not even sure I can describe what I watched as football.
That just sounds like people running in circles.
Yeah.
Almost literally.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. It was bad. It was sad. It was everything. And nothing. It was a waste of time, is what it was. And
that's definitely a way to put it.
Yeah. Move from the NFL to college football. This was one of the greatest weeks of college football I have ever seen. And it started Friday night too. The 2 Friday night games were incredible. First of all, Washington lost to Rutgers. Washington will now host a rematch of last year's national championship versus Michigan in prime time on NBC this week.
I'm going to be at that game.
You're what?
I'm going to be at that game.
And who are you going to be rooting for?
I cannot say.
Say. I've made very clear who I'm rooting for. I am rooting for Michigan. I don't like Michigan, but I don't like Washington even more.
Yeah, there are family ties on both sides, which makes it difficult for me. I will be rooting for both simultaneously in some way. I do not know how that is possible. I will be sitting with people who are rooting for Michigan, so I guess you could say I'm rooting for Michigan.
Okay, but by the way, any Washington admissions people out there, I'm applying to Washington. I don't hate you as a school. I just dislike your athletic program. Don't reject me because I said I was rooting for Michigan. Okay.
Same, but I don't know enough about sports to really have an opinion.
Oh, for me, the only reason that I hate their athletics program is pure pressure. I resent the fact that I've been pressured as a Seattle person into rooting for them, and I hate them now.
I mean, that's fair.
And if I go there, I will have a ton of reasons to like them, and I will root for them, and I will probably go to every football game and every basketball game because I love sports. But for now, you guys lost to frickin' Rutgers, who is actually having a pretty good start to the year. In fairness, 4-0, and they look like a team that could actually go somewhere, right? We should maybe start talking about 7-0 Rutgers. Nebraska's going to be a tough game at Nebraska, but then Wisconsin, they should win that. UCLA, they should win that. It's possible that they could go into USC at the end of the month.
That would be wild.
At 7-0, and that is not usual for a Rutgers program. Rutgers, the rest of their schedule is easy. Rutgers does not play Michigan, Ohio State, or Penn State this year. Their schedule is Nebraska, Wisconsin, UCLA, USC, Minnesota, Maryland, Illinois, and Michigan State. Look, I'm not saying that Rutgers is going to, but could this be a 10-win team this year? I think it could be. The other Friday night game this week was a wild ending. Miami, Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech got a Hail Mary to win the game after blowing a big lead to Miami, but they get the Hail Mary to win the game, then overturned on review. Look, he probably didn't catch it, but you have to have indisputable evidence and to overturn a call, and there was not indisputable evidence. I'm sorry, that upset should have stood, but Probably because
Do
of
we
that, the
not have
college
do we
game
not
day
have
is going to
cameras
the
on that
Miami
kind of?
Cal game this week, so that's a
Sorry,
fun story.
isn't that what cameras are for?
Yes, but there has to be so the officials make the call on the field, right? There has to be sufficient evidence, essentially proof beyond a reasonable doubt that the call on the field was wrong in order to overturn it.
And video footage did not support that.
No,
Or
I think
was there
it's
just none?
likely that it wasn't a catch, but I don't think judging by the video that you can really tell one way or the other. And
That's fair.
if that's the case, you have to stay the call. Other big college football games this week. There were a lot of fun ones. The military academies, Army and Navy, both 4-0 for the first time since 1945.
Wow.
That's fun. 1945 turns out was a pretty good year for the Army. So, Colorado, they look legit. Travis Hunter is a dude. Shadur Sanders, I hate to say it, is a dude, but the rest of that team, yeah, they don't have much, but those two players on their own are probably enough.
They're
They
gonna
were
carry.
what?
They're gonna carry.
Yeah, exactly. They were huge underdogs to UCF. They beat them by, is that 27? I mean, that's a dominant win. Duke, big comeback versus their in-state rival in North Carolina. It's a fun win there. Kent State, you still suck. Sorry. Kansas. This was a team that we had pretty high hopes for. And then TCU comes in and beats you for your third loss of the year? Fourth loss of the
Kansas,
year? Fourth,
sorry,
fourth
you just
loss of the
did
year.
not deliver.
What?
Kansas, I'm sorry, you just did not
No,
deliver.
they did not. They did not. Fourth loss of the year. UNLV, who had beat Kansas earlier in the year, right? We talked about their quarterback uh, uh, sitting out the rest of the year due to unfulfilled NIL commitments. Turns out they didn't need him. They destroyed Fresno State 59-14, and UNLV now ranked. Real potential there for a college football playoff bid this year.
I'm sorry, did you say 59-14?
Yes, I said 59-14.
That's wild.
Yeah. Wake Forest. They paid $500,000 to Louisiana to come play at Wake Forest, with the theory being that they would beat up on them. They paid them money to essentially to lose, and Louisiana comes in and they beat Wake Forest.
Oh, jeez.
James Madison. They look like a great group of five team once again this year. Boston College, they keep surviving by the skin of their teeth. Big comeback over Western Kentucky this week. The game that they should have had no business losing. Indiana, that's another win over Maryland. This is another team like Rutgers that has a path to being pretty fun. Their next four games actually: Northwestern, Nebraska, Washington, Michigan State.
Wow.
There's a non-zero chance that they host Michigan on November 9th at 9 as a 9-0 team.
Wow. That's not easy.
No. Boise State, big win over Washington State. That ends any chance that Washington State had any slim path out of the college football playoff berth. Washington State pretty much had to go undefeated. The fact that they're not a conference champion, though they can't be a conference champion, therefore can't get an auto bid to the playoff. Pretty much had to go undefeated. Texas A&M, they've bounced back well after that loss to Notre Dame in week 1. They got a big win over Arkansas, who had been looking good. BYU's undefeated. This is another fun team. Auburn, they look awful. Lost to Oklahoma. They've lost some games that they should not to Cal, Arkansas, and then now at home to Oklahoma. Oklahoma State, on the other hand, it's not their year. I'm sorry. Kansas State is better. Utah's better. At least those two teams are better in the Big 12, and there might be more that are better. Louisville, Notre Dame. There's another big game this week. Notre Dame, if they win out at this point, they're probably making the playoffs. They're going to move up in the rankings. USC, good win over Wisconsin. Michigan, we should talk about that call versus Minnesota, because That was not an offsides on the onside kick. Minnesota deserved that chance on the field and win the game. The officials deprived them of it. That's that. So Michigan barely survives again. They look fine. They don't look great. Oregon, good win. Penn State, good win over ranked Illinois. Utah, bad loss to Arizona. Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin should spend less time on the internet and more time teaching people how to play football because they lost to Kentucky. Kentucky's impressed in their last couple games, honestly. But the real game that we want to talk about here, Georgia, Alabama. Morris, this may be the
what
greatest
happened?
college football game I've ever watched.
What happened? Give us a little rundown.
All right, so for those who did not watch the game, first of all, I am sorry for what you missed out on.
Go watch a replay.
Yes. Second of all, battle between second-ranked Georgia and fourth-ranked Alabama in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And it starts right. We're talking leading into the game. We're talking it's being hyped up as a potential game of the year. And we didn't see that in the first quarter. We saw Alabama, to borrow a quote from Donald Trump, they were eating the dogs, as in eating the Georgia Bulldogs. It was 28-0.
Interesting. Wow.
28-0.
28-0
And then they were
Georgia?
down 23 at halftime. And then Georgia comes back. And they make it close at the end. And then an unbelievable play, a one-play drive, 67 yards for the go-ahead touchdown with 2:31 left. So Alabama gets the ball back. First play, 75-yard touchdown to get the lead again. That ends up being the final score because
so what's the final score?
41-34 as Georgia throws an interception in the end zone with 43 left to seal the game.
Sorry, 3 seconds left to seal the game?
43 seconds left to seal the game.
Yeah. Wow.
I was watching this, and I was watching the. I had no words while watching this game. I'm still kind of processing it. I'm still kind of processing this game.
Can we go back to what you were thinking for a second? Do we have any tweets from you?
Yeah, we have a few. Yeah, we have several. Yeah, lots of all caps. On the C&C Talks Twitter feed during this one. Just an all-time game. I don't know what. I still don't have words for it. I will always remember where I was watching. Real quick, MLB Playoffs starting Tuesday after a great doubleheader. Mets Braves to figure out who's in the playoffs. The answer is both of them. Braves will go to San Diego for the wild card series. Mets will go to Milwaukee. And then we get in the AL in the wild card series, Tigers Astros. Boo. And then Royals Orioles. Some fun storylines this postseason. We'll talk about it more once the games get underway, and we wish our. And then finally to end, U.S. It wasn't easy necessarily.
First, unfortunately, 3-time winning World Series champion, 24-year baseball player, MLB baseball player turned coach turned scandal. Pete Rose has passed away today, Monday, September 30th, when we're recording this. About 5 p.m. Pacific.
Yeah, and it's hard because I do actually know a couple people that are related to him. But Pete Rose, I do not like the takes that he should be in the Baseball Hall of Fame, or even that we should especially be honoring him. And first of all, with the Hall of Fame, it has
MLB.
What?
He was banned from the MLB.
Yeah, exactly. Like for gambling, and sure, we've seen now gambling's being embraced. First of all, you have to follow the rules at the time, and second of all, he agreed to the ban, and so that the league wouldn't go after him in a criminal sense. He agreed to the Hall of Fame ban, and he should not be added to the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. He's a stain on the game of baseball. As great of a player as he was, and he was a great player. But the bigger issue, and the bigger reason why we shouldn't be celebrating Pete Rose, is that he's a pedophile.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's not great.
I think maybe this is something that should be brought up more when talking about him. Obviously, obviously wasn't like wishing death, but like, am I especially sad he died? I'm sad for the people that I know that are related to him that have now lost a relative. But I ultimately, at the end of the day, Pete Rose was not a good person.
Yeah. I mean, going back to the band for a second, not only was he betting, at the time he was betting, he was managing, yeah, he was managing the Reds. And so it's a conflict of interest. It's the same kind of thing as insider trading with stocks. Like, even if gambling and betting was embraced at the time, it shouldn't have mattered.
We're gonna move on really
Currently,
quickly because we've gone
currently, no
longer.
one knows.
Sorry,
Currently,
go
it's
ahead.
unknown how he passed away.
Yeah.
Coroner's office is saying they're investigating.
Yep.
And yeah, we will keep you updated next week, maybe.
Yeah. Real quick before we go, because we've gone longer than we meant to somehow. This always happens. But President's Cup this week, U.S. wins again. Wasn't easy necessarily, but wasn't overly difficult. This is a cup that they've won now like 7 or 8 straight times, I believe. It was a pretty solid win for the U.S. Now the question is, Ryder Cup next year, can they beat Europe? Probably not. We'll see. We'll see how that ends up going. That's gonna do it for this episode of C&C Talks. Thanks for listening. Make sure to subscribe. Episodes coming out every single week. That they're available everywhere you listen to podcasts, especially as we get closer to the election. We'll have weekly episodes as specials, so stay tuned for more information on that. We're gonna have some specials breaking down the election even more. All of that, everything available wherever you listen to your podcasts. cctalks.com is where to go for more info about the show, as well as our Twitter feed. Make sure to follow us there at CC Talks Podcast. You can follow Charlie on Twitter as well, CC Talks Charlie. You can join our Discord server, cctalks.com/discord. All of this information and more is in the description below. Also, if you want the rest of our Twitter handles there in the C&C Talks Twitter account bio. But for now, for our producer Morris, who was gracious enough to guest host this week's episode, production designer Zack, and of course for Charlie, I'm Colin. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.